Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Committee of the Whole to order. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that the agenda for the October 2nd, 2017 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as circulated. There is a member of the public here that's keen to hear any answers that might be available regarding a specific issue under Public Works. And I wondered if perhaps a councillor would move that we move the Public Works portion up. So that's moved by Councillor Papp, that we move the Public Works portion immediately after departmental reports, so 4.01. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that any members may have. Do any members have any conflicts?
None, Mr. Mayor.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, can that be so noted? I have none either. We're now going to look to the Public Works Monthly Report. Let me just find that piece of paper. It has been moved by...
You got it?
Yeah, I just almost.
It's been moved by Councillor Kersey that Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd, 2017 Public Works Monthly Report for information. Comments or questions to that report? Councillor Durley and then Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question, and it's under the engineering portion. Numerous complaints from residents in areas of new development were received, which stem from contractor activities relating to drainage, sidewalks, turning bulbs, and insufficient monitoring inspection of these contractors. Although inspection is the responsibility of the developer, the complaints are borne by the town, and with those significant penalty in the agreements, issues are often left unresolved. How can we ensure that these things get resolved? Because I've had a number of emails that I forwarded through to staff dealing with these very issues. Is there a suggestion staff can give us that would give a little more teeth to our enforcement of this type of thing?
Thank you. Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the responsibilities of the engineering department in this matter really are related to having the ability to monitor the actual activities in the field and compare it to what the development or subdivision agreement requires. And so it's a preventive type work where you're relying on communication with the inspectors, the developers' inspectors, giving you updates on what's happening, as well as records of inspection to show things are being constructed. The engineering services with the service levels that we presented last year, it's just not an activity that they're able to afford at this time with the resources we have, without perhaps shifting another service level to take on that preventive action of monitoring activities, being in closer touch with developers and the inspectors. So at this point, it's something that is done on a reactionary basis rather than preventive. So short-term solutions could be additional outside resources to monitor the inspectors, or internal resources to be considered in the future for engineering, or a consideration of a shift in service levels with engineering, so that other duties that they have, which I kind of try to highlight here, would drop down so that they could pick this up.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I get from this is that some contractors are not doing things that they're supposed to be doing in agreements, and this is to me what the concerns are when residents contact me. Is there some way that we can perhaps put a deposit down to ensure that all these things are done, and if you don't do them by a certain date, they will be done, and the cost of that will be taken from these insurance policy type things?
Ms. Clemencio.
Mr. Chair, currently we take securities for the work that the developers are responsible for. We've had this discussion at length in SMT to find out how we can make it easier to access those securities, because the challenge is in part that the agreement is written so that it's actually a default on the agreement should they not, say, install sidewalks within a certain time period after occupancy of a home. So it requires giving notice and giving second notice, and these things take a lot of time before you're able to access those securities. So we've talked internally, especially with the fire chief and with the director of planning, about modifying our agreements going forward so that we could access those securities more readily and get the work done by using those securities rather than having to go into the default of the agreement to get things moving. That's sort of the long term, but it doesn't help with the existing agreements that we have. That really is a monitoring issue. So it's partially developers and cracking the whip a bit with some. Some are excellent and stay on top of it. Others really do not necessarily obey the timing that's been suggested and or prescribed in the agreement. Other issues are with the actual contractors and arrangements that are made independently of the developer and the developer's consultant not necessarily being in the loop with what the contractor is actually doing on site. And we rely on the residents' eyes and ears. So there's a few levels of issues there.
Okay, it feels like you got a finger on that pulse, though, and perhaps you can tighten some of those things up in the future. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor King, right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This wasn't actually my question to the director, but sort of riding on the coattails of Councillor Durley. My question would be, the past practice then is what you want to do moving forward, is to be more on top of the situation of the developer and be able to access those securities. But if you have residents who are in a development that was built a few years ago, that have those deficiencies, what is their recourse?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they usually have contacted us or contacted engineering, and we consult the planning documents that we have on file. We'll go out on site and inspect, and then we usually try to resolve it in a friendly manner, verbally, and ask for the response. And if that doesn't get responded to, we will start with the letter writing, and with the last resort having to go to default. So we haven't had to do that this year. We've been able to get some activity with written notice and deadlines, but it does take a lot of staff time and residents' patience to get things moving.
Okay, thank you. May I continue?
Please. Yep.
With the question
Unless
that I
there's
had?
nobody else on this issue. Thank you, go ahead.
Okay, my question actually was related to the public service requests, because I note that there's 32 that were publicly generated in September. I just need some understanding of how these numbers jive, because it's showing 32 publicly generated, and at the end of September there were 26 still open and 23 closed. So I'm just wondering, how does that pan out, and then what number gets carried over into October?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the data generating part of the PSR program is a bit of a challenge. So we have to go in and pull that data manually from open and closed. The issue here is that we will close PSRs that are from the previous period or periods. So they skew the numbers. It's not that we have that month and you open and close so many of them.
It's
You will also
cumulative.
close backlogged ones as well.
Okay, I guess that helps, kind of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other items for the director? Can we hear about Pot Street? And if there's any timelines or anything, the resident is here.
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Chair. Poth Street, the second round of geotechnical investigation was completed. The consultant was informed verbally that they were able to find steady ground at 100-foot depth. The designer is now going back to modify the designs in accordance with that investigation to find the most cost-effective way to find stability for the culvert design. We are awaiting those designs. We checked in with them last Friday, and they were in the works. I don't have an update at this time. They figured it would be several weeks to get that revised design and construction estimate. They're aware of the urgency, and I did indicate that we want to bring that construction estimate back to council, and we'll see what we can do with timing to try to get this in this information back to council and decide where to go in terms of budget.
Okay, so perhaps you can keep us updated if anything changes, then we could pass that along to the resident. It's of importance to all folks in that area, and specifically one resident is here this evening. So,
Of course.
okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other items? I wondered about is there anything on here about hurricane? And we were looking for information on that, and I think residents of Hurricane were hopeful that, everybody's hopeful that something can get done rather quickly. I know they've certainly put up signs, and that's helped with the traffic. Is there any update you can give us, Madam Director, regarding that? I know that a staff person is away, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is, as of today, we just finalized the numbers for the costs of the traffic calming to put into the 2018 capital budget request. I did promise council that we would come back with a report as requested to
Okay,
see
so-
if something would be done in the interim. So I have those numbers now.
You don't have to give them
and
to
we'll
us now,
prepare a
'cause-
report. Yep,
Yeah, maybe for next council, if you can give us information.
that's the plan.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I just want to highlight for council an application under the OCF funding, for Pelham Street Storm Project. So we've certainly heard from residents about Pelham Street and the storm project, and the application by staff to do that. So there may be something coming forward if hopefully there will be, and we might receive funding regarding that, but I wanted to highlight that for members of council. And this was a topic, as councilors will know, some of these issues with infrastructure is one of the items that we talked about in our strategic plan. How might we ensure that that kind of infrastructure that's out there does get fixed? So I know staff are working diligently on that. I'll keep asking questions on behalf of the community. So I'm going to call the question on the report from the director. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now we're going back to the regularly scheduled program and have community planning and development. So it has been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd Planning and Development Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Gurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make one comment about the Saturday session at the Fire Station Number 2 about the East Fenwick Secondary Plan. Working a tough crowd, Barb did an excellent job in bringing the point across, and Uta did an excellent job in her presentation. Things were made perfectly clear. Some people didn't get it as clear as others. However, I think the message really got out very well, and I congratulate Barb on a job well done, and Uta as well. As I think the whole day was a positive one, even though, as I said, it was at times a tough crowd.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gurley. Anyone else to that issue?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Junkin and Councillor Kersey. Councillor Junkin.
Although I wasn't at that event on Saturday, I went the next day to the Fireman 100th presentation. So I had a couple of residents come up to me from there that had been there Saturday. And so my question to you, Mr. Mayor, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning, I find that, for lack of a better word, somewhat absurd that the people that are planning that development would go to an elementary school and ask the kids where they prefer to live. I take it that happened. Someone told me that that's what happened. And it just seems that you're building a development on some kids, I don't know whether they be 10 years old or 12 years old, that obviously in the next 5 or 6, 8 years are definitely going to be going through a lot of life changes. And I don't know, I just find it very hard to believe where the sense is in going to an elementary school to help plan a development. Maybe you can help me understand that. Thank you.
Madam Director, please help the councillor understand why we might want to ask future generations how to design the town.
10-year-old
Please.
kids?
Ms.
Mr. Mayor,
Weems.
through you, so yes, part of the public consultation that was approved for this project was to engage the youth. And so consultants have been to see, I think it was the grade 6, 7, and 8-year-old, or grade 6, 7, and 8 classes at St. Anne's School. So that's really your 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. They will be going to the Wellington Heights School and the high school students as well to engage the youth. And so as part of that process, they try to understand from a child's perspective what it is that you like about your community. How far do they walk to school? How far do they, live? How do they get around? If they don't walk, do they feel safe walking and cycling and those kind of things, to try to understand what it is. When you're building a community, you build it for all, not just for seniors or for people that are empty nesters, or for your first-time home buyers, or for singles. You have to consider the whole demographic when we're planning our communities. So it's really important to consult with the children. And certainly those children, yes, one of the questions was, well, if you wanted to live, in a house or an apartment or a townhouse or whatever, what kind of housing form would you like to live in? It's trying to understand where children see themselves, because in 10 years, 20 years, when East Fenwick is built out, hopefully we'll be able to have housing to accommodate those children. And some of them did say we want to live in apartments.
That's right.
Some of them said we want to stay in houses. So you get that cross section, but it is important, because the children are going to be the people that are going to be living in these communities in 10, 15, and 20 years from now. If they're 10 years old now, they're going to be 20 in 10 years. If they're 12, they're going to be 22, and hopefully they'll be looking for that first time home unit that they want, and hopefully we can accommodate them in the community that they grew up in. And so yes, that's one of the reasons for consulting with the youth. We will be going out to the high schools as well to get that perspective when you're 15, 16 years old, and maybe you're a little bit more mature and you can project where you would be in 5 or 10 years, and trying to understand what their needs are going to be. So it's a cross section of people that we certainly are talking to as part of this process, and Saturday's session was one of those consultation sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
So,
Thanks for the excellent response, actually.
thank you
staff.
for the clarity. The survey obviously was a lot more detailed than what I was led to believe. Whether or not I agree with it or not on all fronts, I mean, you go to those same kids and ask them what they want to be, you'd have 85 astronauts, right? I'm just saying that things change a lot in a person's life from the time they're 12 till the time they're 20. Whereas if you ask that same demographic from 20 to 27, they would be a lot more stable. They would know where they're going. probably get a lot more dependable stats from that group as opposed to the kids. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also was at that meeting, and I certainly would echo Councillor Durley's comments with respect to our planning director's management of the meeting. Quite frankly, my point of view on the meeting was it was hijacked by a number of people who really wanted to come there and put forward their voice and only their voice, and not to contribute to the planning process, but to complain about the very fact that in fact we would ever consider development in Fenwick, which is unfortunate because I think that the planning group that is working diligently to bring forward a comprehensive plan had a lot of good things to offer, and we're seeking the input of the community. And I think, and Madam Director, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it was even turned back to the work tables until about 10 to 3. And by then, I think everybody was fed up and kind of, from what I've observed, mostly picked up their books and hit the bricks. So it's unfortunate. I guess that's the risk of going into the public sphere. But the unfortunate thing is an opportunity to contribute to the development of that plan was lost, in my view. Be interested to hear what you have to say about it, Madam Director.
Ms. Weens.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, certainly we started off the presentation or the session with a presentation that was supposed to be about 25 minutes in length, and then allow for group table discussions to try to understand people's thinking around some of the concepts that they are developing in terms of the mix and density of units and where development should take place. The presentation itself, you're quite right, didn't end until about 10 to 3. There were several times we kept saying to them, we will, please let us finish the presentation and your questions will be answered, and then we want to hear through you through these group discussions, but we kept getting sidelined by questions, and so it is unfortunate we didn't get that, because you're quite right, many people did leave. There was a few that stayed and provided some comments, but we didn't get the same fulsome kind of participation and discussion that we had hoped we'd get in terms of a really good working through those concepts to see what works, what doesn't work, and why not, and what could we improve on. And so in that sense, that portion of the workshop, I guess, wasn't successful because we didn't get that. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else on that? Just on that, it's, when I think about our strategic focus and our vision for the community of being vibrant, innovative, and caring, a caring community listens to all members of the community. Mm-hmm. A caring community doesn't just go with the loudest voice, those that, as the councillor said, might want to hijack a meeting. A caring community goes out to people and tries to hear their voice and listen to them. That's right. And so I was impressed when the consultants were at the event that we had in Fenwick. I called it Sodfest. It was called something else, but Green Street Challenge, thank you. Green Street Challenge. And what happened there was, as the children were preoccupied with the excellent balloon clown, right? Those parents of those school-aged children were providing input into the plan. And it's important for us to do that, to give all a chance. Not just the loudest, not just the biggest, not just the oldest, but also the youngest. There's that saying that it takes a community to raise a child. Well, I think we should listen to what children have to say about our community and the vision that they have for the community. They have an inherent sense in the community. So I'm pleased that we've gone out to the schools, and we're going to go out to the schools again. I received some feedback from members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council who are leaders in their school and leaders in this community that were so impressed and that they had a chance to talk about the future of our town, their town. So I'm very pleased that we're doing that, and I'd say we should do more of it. Thank you. Any other items under the Director's Report for Community Planning and Development? Certainly been a busy time, busy month in terms of building permits. Very, very pleased to see that, and we certainly see the drop-off from August to September, which is quite different, or a little bit different than previous years. Does the director have any comment about that? Is that as a result of the development charges at the region and the increase, the 50% increase?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, you can certainly see in terms of the statistics during the months of July and August, we received a floodgate of building permit applications. We were getting 30 a week in August, it seemed like, but it was as a result of developers wanting to get in and get their permit issued, applied for and issued prior to the increase in development charges that came into effect the 1st of September at the region. And so as a result, you're seeing the September numbers drop off. You know, we would normally have been a little bit more stable, but it's because there was that unusual uptake in July and August. We expect that probably, you know, come October, November, things will come back to normal.
Good. Thank you very much. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that the Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd, 2017 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Questions or comments under the Director's Report? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, maybe next time, it's not really for the treasurer, but to the Director of Public Works. Road base and surface repair program, where essentially is this taking place? Circle paving, I see.
Director, can you help the councillor, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a range of locations all over the town.
So it's a plethora of different repairs in that, so it's not one specific area.
Mr. Chair, that's correct,
Okay.
yep.
And that's the same with the
Right.
sidewalk concrete repair. Is it those white marks that are on the sidewalk that are going to be replaced?
Through you,
Where
Mr.
the X's
Chair,
are?
yes, they are marked, pre-marked for the
trip over every
contractors.
morning.
Yep.
Do it on your own.
Don't step on them, right?
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, Councillor Papp is marking his own. That's great, because certainly to see them and the improvements, a lot of folks talked about when they were done last year, how some sidewalks that hadn't been done in a number of years were cracked, et cetera, and we replaced them. So kudos to staff for doing that. Thank you. Anything else on the Director's report?
Nope.
I thought I had one thing here. Oh, the green team. Wow, amazing results. Congratulations. I know that's more than just your team, and you're kind of reporting on it, but outstanding results for the entire staff. So congratulations. That's, you know, there's got to be, how do we celebrate that success, to go to what Councillor Durley's suggests very often? Is there some way to do that, some award we can apply for? Like, that's amazing. Or get them reusable mugs or something like that, that they can use, something to honor the ongoing work of staff. Councillor Papp?
Quickly, you can do that through ABLE, your environmental.
Okay.
File an application for next year's ABLE. They would qualify, automatic.
So more work for you, but perhaps it's something,
Yeah.
okay, something to consider. Thank you. I don't know if the director heard that. But in terms of a environmental award, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario may have some sort of award that
They
we've
do.
seen at
We've seen it.
the Green Fund, et cetera.
Yep.
That's great. Congratulations. Anything else? Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. been moved by Councillor Kersey, the Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd, 2017 Fire and Bylaw Services Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments?
I lost my question.
Great celebration on Sunday, Chief. Was outstanding, and it was really a great family time. And to celebrate 100 years of dedication and sacrifice, so congratulations. Fenwick's Fire Service. Councillor Papp, do you have something?
No, I forgot about that. Just
Okay. And Chief, Councillor King, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, my question is related to the section for police reports, and I'm just wondering if this is a new category in this report. And that's why we don't have any statistics in there. There's no data.
Chief?
For bylaw. Through Mr. Mayor, we're getting more involved with we don't actually have community policing anymore, but we have officers that are spending more time. We're encouraging them to spend more time in Pelham, and Craig and Greg are both engaging them more on a regular basis, and we're trying to file more complaints or through their website stuff. So it might not be a town matter, it might be a police matter, but we received the initial information, and we're trying to feed it through. So we're just trying to kickstart
Okay.
more activity, more interest.
Yeah, good.
So we look forward to reporting on that. That's great. That's excellent
Sure.
customer service. So
Yeah.
folks approach you, Chief, it sounds like, Councillor, folks approach the staff and have an issue, and instead of staff saying, sorry, not my department, you
Yeah.
actually work together with them. So that's great.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. Others? Thanks for the brief update, Chief, on the regional radio project. So we look forward to that as it comes to fruition. Thank you. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin. The Committee of the Whole receive the Human Resources Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Pop?
just quickly through you to Director, the organizational design is critical for us to move ahead with meeting our requirements, service levels now and in the future. So I presume that when you bring this report, it'll be part of the 2018 budget considerations. Is that fair to say?
Madam
Through you,
Director.
Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. And so just so you're aware, I've really spent the last year working with the directors and most of my time certainly with the Public Works
Right.
Department. But we just went through a very in-depth session with all of SMT, so now every director is aware of what every department is looking for, and we're just getting ready the final presentation to present to council. So I'm working with the clerk, or our town clerk to schedule a meeting, so we'll get that in front of council shortly in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as preliminary, just quickly, because as we move towards opening the new center and other, because we keep hearing we're short of resources, so I think we need to bite the bullet this time and ask ourselves, not only for this coming year, but future years, what we need in the way of manpower and resources to carry out our services. And I presume that would be part of that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, and that was one thing, and again, as we've kind of gone back to the drawing board on this again and again, was really to make sure that we went through every iteration
Right.
of possible hiring,
Right.
that I believe we all truly feel that what we're going to present is what we need in order to have a very successful 2018, as well as continuing to land that foundation for coming years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That
Okay, thank you.
answers my question.
Any others to that? Any others to other areas in the report? Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director, I'm just wondering about the HR audit that has been conducted on the benefits compliance, and I'm wondering if you can give us a little more information at this point on what that inconsistency is.
Yes, absolutely, through you, Mr. Chair. This isn't an audit in any way financially. This is really just about HR and our processing. So we're deep diving into everything because, again, HR has recently taken over pay and ben. And over the years, we've had a lot of people working on these systems. So we're going through right now to make sure that everything is consistent. So this particular one was for, and I apologize because we've just done so many. Oh, this was long-term disability coverage, and we've got some stragglers as far as employees go that don't have all their documentation signed. So it's really about auditing files, making sure we've got all the up-to-date paperwork. At the same time, we're also auditing our iCity platform to make sure that everything in there is consistent and up to date. So we've got a really good housekeeping workload ahead of us that we're going to dive into very deeply.
That's good news. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Others? Councilor Ribbiak.
Mayor, and perhaps I missed the email or the report earlier, but I think I just heard that HR is taking over salary and benefits.
Do tell.
Mr. Chair, yes, absolutely. So with the onboarding of our new treasurer, we really talked about it with our CAO, and we recognized that it was something certainly that I had been asking for since my arrival here, and then just in partnership with Teresa and knowing the workload that she has in front of her, we agreed to make that move. So as you're aware, our HR and payroll clerk was reporting dotted line to me with solid line to Teresa, so it just made sense at this time to flip it and have her do solid line to me. Of course, anything regarding the financials, so for instance, when we think about payroll, the clerk and myself are reviewing the payroll documentations to make sure, for one, that the people that we are paying are truly employees here at the town, and we're validating that their hours worked and their salaries. That's important to do, and that their hours worked and their salaries are accurate. And then we turn it over to our partners in finance, who release the corresponding funds. So we still maintain that dual custody of the finance versus the payroll, but moving payroll and Ben over to HR was the right thing to do at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I guess as a career HR person, I just want to commend the organization, CAO, for his wisdom in allowing that to happen. I think that what will result from that is a more complete and more developed view of compensation matters generally, and so I'm quite pleased to hear that. Actually, as I said, I missed the memo. Was there one? I'm not sure, but if there wasn't, I'm sure glad to hear it now. So, thank you, thank you,
Thank you. Any others? Ms. Gilbert, you included some information about some of the new hires, and I'm around this building a little bit more than councilors are, so I know these individuals.
We're going to say that again. Absolutely.
So I know these individuals. This is supposed to be positive, councilors. Positive, right?
Oh, yeah, positive. Sorry, it's positive. It's positive that you're here.
Actually, we're very positive that you are here.
Oh, good, thank you. So I've known these individuals, and just that they've only been here a month, but they just seem to fit in so well. So here's the positive comment, colleagues. That congratulations on these new hires. I'm very pleased that they're with us, with the town, sharing their experience, and they just fit in so well. They do. So congratulations. That's all I was trying to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's great.
Awesome. It's awesome.
We should have like a
Wow.
celebration, and these counselors can get to know them a little bit better.
Let's bring out the drinks.
Mr. Chair, we have awesome people throughout this town. I just want to throw that in.
Absolutely.
Everybody's pretty
Absolutely.
amazing.
All right. Are you ready for the question? I know I am.
Oh, yeah.
All those in
We
favor?
10 minutes ago.
Yeah, opposed? Motion carries. Gotta have fun, right, Sam? It's been moved by Councillor Papp that Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd, 2017 Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Monthly Report for information. Councillor Kersey.
You want to hear from me?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. Actually, I was going to bring a little report, but I figured there were more important issues at council to deal with, so I didn't want to belabor it. But we just had a recent library board meeting, and one of the statistics that jumped out at me was that when you had the Green Street Challenge, Madam Director, the library there had the largest single, the single largest number of people go through the library ever. 430 individuals went into the new library, looked around at the facilities, looked at the books, engaged with staff. So it did exactly what it wanted to do, and that's
Perfect.
bring the community together and get them engaged. Congratulations.
Thank you, Counselor.
Positive.
Very positive, thank you. Any others? Counselor Pap?
Not to that positive comment, but to another one. There's no question, the attendance at our supper market and other events is climbing. With it, it brings the successes of the challenges that we have. So one of the things, if you want to call it sort of the, I don't want to call it the elephant in the room, but we need to, once you meet with those groups, is discuss the expansion of the whole area of serving. And I know the alcoholic beverages and that. It worked during Summerfest. Maybe this is the time we sit down with that group, and I'll leave that up to staff. Vicky, you can handle that unless you want us. I mean, the time has come for us to, decide how we're going to, because what I understand, and all of you've seen, is it's crowded. And that's good. That's a good one. That's positive. But we got to come up. The second thing that came up, and I'm not sure, Mr. CEO, they talked again about the, I'm not saying, the topographical problems they're having with Peace Park, right? Is that a fair way to say it? And they're looking at, so I'm not sure if those are topics of discussion, but definitely the other areas, when it comes to the areas of eating and enjoying, I think it's time to bite the bullet. We got to have that discussion with them. Right, Councilor Chris, we've had this and then it's over. I don't think we're going to get any pushback. I'm not gathering that unless somebody tells me, but I presume it's on the agenda. I'm not sure if you can answer when you discussed it
Ms.
with
Van
them.
Ravensway?
For you, Mr. Mayor, our meeting is actually next Wednesday morning. And,
Next Wednesday morning?
Yes, and that will be discussed.
Perfect.
And then we will be reporting back probably at the beginning of November.
Good. Counselor Kersey to that?
Along that same line, Mr. Chair, in many of these circumstances, we're starting to push the boundary of our license.
Oh, yeah.
And the last thing we want to do is get offside on our license, and then we lose it, and we have more problems. It's an important, Thursday nights are an important feature in our community.
Right.
And so we need to do what's best for the community, not necessarily just for one particular group.
Correct.
So,
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
that's the thing
Any
to
others? Just to that, some of the conversations I've had with some of, not all the organizers, but some of the organizers of the band shell, they know, or they think they know, which weeks are going to be the sellouts, like just everybody's going to be there, et cetera. And they know which weeks, based on holidays, and they actually do base the performers on some of those weeks. So they know, because they've done it for so many years, an amazing job, that they have the statistics on that. So maybe there's a night where something gets ratcheted up, and actually, the chief had this thought. If we know that it's going to be a huge crowd, then, and it's Elvis, and it's going to draw people, then he brings members of the fire service there to be there to help. But if it's going to be whatever, and it's going to get rained out, or there's not a lot of people, then, it's kind of a ratcheting up. So it could happen.
That's right.
Somehow. It doesn't have to be always licensed, or always this way, or always that way. It can be ratcheted or scaled according to who it is. So I don't know if, you don't have to respond unless you want to. Well, you can if you want to. But I just, if we can be flexible in it, I think would be helpful, right? Resilient and flexible. Ms. Van Ravensway.
Mayor, when you're applying for your special occasion permit, you need to identify an area. And once that area is identified, if you are moving, let's say if this is the area, and we know it's going to be a small crowd, and as you're suggesting, you move the area back here,
Yeah.
you're still responsible for
For
the
that other
area
area.
over
Oh, okay, okay.
So,
Interesting.
in applying for the application, if you're expanding, you're expanding.
Mm.
So, that's what we need to keep in mind.
So that
You're
balances.
responsible for that area.
Okay. Thanks for that. I was just trying to be creative. Okay, thank you. Well, we look forward to the results of that meeting. It's great, and it's one of the amazing things about our community are those Thursday night events, the farmer's market, the band shell, the supper market. This is the last farmer's market this weekend here, so I encourage all to pick up their supplies for Thanksgiving weekend here at the farmer's market. But and it's been an amazing summer. So congratulations to all, and please pass along our thanks to those volunteers, both on the supper market, the farmer's market, and the band shell. Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Motion here by Councillor Ribbiak regarding Committee of the Whole receiving the October 2nd, 2017 Clerks Department monthly report for information. Are there any questions or comments?
Pretty cool.
No.
Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know whether it was intended or not, but there's a number highlighted in the statistics. I wondered if there was a reason for that, or was it just,
Lottery
Number
licenses.
lottery licenses
Number
issued,
13. Well, it's triskaidekaphobia, Madam Clerk, that you have an aversion to the number 13.
That must be it.
yeah. Is that all it is? Just,
I don't know how to spell that, Sam, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just waiting for confirmation, but that is the number that has been issued
thank you.
to date.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked this question, I'm not sure if it's within the clerk's purview, but she's an expert in all things municipal, so I thought that I could direct the question here.
Okay.
When I've read through the Municipal Act and looked at, with respect to the troubles we've recently had, it seems to me that the Municipal Act is silent on a resolution where one jurisdiction or one body enters into the jurisdiction of another body. Would it be worthwhile asking the clerk to do a search of the Municipal Act and see if in fact there is a way in which a resolution could be brought forward? And if not, perhaps we address a letter to the minister
Municipal affairs.
pointing out some of our tribulations and asking for, when they're considering reviewing the Municipal Act, that they look to
I see.
putting in
Okay.
some sort of a mechanism whereby a community could go to a higher level to deal with it. So we're not getting into this
Yeah.
headbutting as we found ourselves. So I
All right, let's see if the clerk has any comments.
on it.
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly I will investigate that. There are sections in the Municipal Act that deal specifically with spheres of jurisdiction between upper and lower municipalities,
Yeah.
between regional and single tier, but I will bring that forward in a report for members of council.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to that point, two items quickly. The first is that the motion that we approved at council did talk about spheres of influence and did circulate it to the minister with kind of that in mind, Councillor.
Okay,
And I
great.
think so.
I was hoping you had
that's-
that in
yeah,
mind, so.
starting the conversation. And the second thought is, and I'm turning to Councillor Papp, the discussion that's been had for a number of years, really since 2006 and beyond, about intermunicipal transit, and the region was funding the pilot project, I think, from 2009
That's correct.
to this spring without being in the sphere of having that sphere of jurisdiction. And the staff always came back, well, it's not in our sphere of jurisdiction, and well, what does that mean? How does that translate, And there never really was sort of any, well, somebody could take us to court or something. I don't know what the resolution is. But it's very interesting, and so the motion that this council approved in the spring, and regional council, initiated by regional council and the three area municipalities regarding intermunicipal transit was to finally, I'll say, bless the region's involvement in it. So, you know, it made the marriage
Legal.
true and legal, as opposed to, it wasn't before, it was just sort of money changing hands and a service that was provided. So it is an interesting question.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising it. Councillor Papp?
In 30 seconds, you're quite right, because when it was first set up, they needed the tri-party arrangement that had to be done way back. That had to be done first before the region considered the specialized transit.
Yes.
So I found it interesting
that's-
that it was putting the cart before the horse. They went out and did it,
Right.
which is fine.
And-
Then they asked us, is it okay if we get involved?
Councillor, you led the charge, among others, across the region for the specialized transit, and you did it properly, and you didn't have the
That's true.
service
We did.
until whatever.
We did.
And it was uploaded, essentially,
Yes,
it
it
was,
was.
this jurisdiction was moved from one body to the other.
That's right.
From the area municipalities to the other.
That's how it worked.
And smoking was moved from
Yep.
lower to upper, upper tier. But, so it's an interesting question, not only for some of the things we've experienced recently, but for other things as well. So thank you for that, and thanks for the latitude, Councillor Durley.
You knew it was coming.
Councillor Durley calls the question. All those in favor?
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? Motion carried. It's moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the October 2nd, 2017 CAO monthly report for information. Okay, you've covered a lot of what was in other reports and other items. Councillor Papp.
Very quickly, using some latitude on the word budget, I trust Mr. CAO, you and the treasurer will give us an update to the end of September where we are with expenditures and income for,
Q3, yes.
is that coming?
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I received an email from a resident about that today, and Q3 well, we just had Q2 in July, July 22nd, I think council looked at it, so I don't know whether it'll be at the next meeting or the meeting after, but
That's fine.
maybe you received the same email from the same individual.
I did.
Okay, good. Mr. CAO, it's listed here that the Oversight Committee for the Community Center, they're intending to report to council in November?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great, we look forward to that. Anything else? Nope. I'm going to call the question, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that this regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting is scheduled for October 10th, following council. Is that a Friday meeting?
There is a committee meeting. It's not following council. I apologize for that.
To our next meeting. I'm going to call the question, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned, thank you.